Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff and another first impressions video. Today we're looking at Airfix's 1 to 35 scale British M3 Stuart, commonly known as the Honey. Well, actually, it's a 2002 Academy kit with new decals in reality. Needless to say, Academy makes some very good kits at this scale, so shouldn't be too bad. So we'll have a look in a moment. It's a red box, so on the front we've got the paint schemes there. Also tells us that we have hard or flexible tracks, and we've got interior detail. Doesn't have the word full there, so it may be that we've got some seats and a breech and that's it. So I don't think it's a full interior, but we might be pleasantly surprised. On the side we have the usual warning information about not making models if you're only 36 months old. Tells us that the decal scheme is copyright 2019. And it's made in Korea, but it doesn't say the year of manufacture of the tooling, which it tends to do these days. If we look at the sides, we've got the same information that's on the front. Both sides are the same. And then when we come to this end here, we've got our paint shout-outs. They're basically generic for A and B, with A having 3 additional colours. Tells us what our two paint options refer to. So one is the 5th Royal Tank Regiment, 7th Armoured Division, North Africa 42, and one is the 192nd Tank Battalion, Provisional Tank Group, Philippines, late 1941, and it's a skill level 2, and I think it was 2 flying hours. Let's have a look in the box. So in the box we've got a lot of bags of separate sprues. I'd assumed when it said hard and soft tracks that we were going to get link and length, but actually it appears that we've got individual tracks. Let's dig out the instructions and have a closer look. Inside the box we've got 2 A4 booklets. We've got one instruction booklet that is gatefold, and then we have a separate gatefold, basically A3 folded, which has our paint schemes on, our paint shout-outs and our sprue maps. So we can see that we've got 2 of each of these for the individual track links. We've got 1 of each of the other sprues. It doesn't mention the rubber band tracks, but they are in there. I just saw them. So let's start with the instruction manual. So this is a typical Airfix front. Has a bit of history. We've got the box art there, and we've got the wash your parts in soapy water instruction. And then the second page is also very familiar with our assembly instructions, study the drawings and so on, and our assembly icons at the bottom. That's where the similarities end. We then go to what is clearly the original Academy instructions, I would imagine. And what we can see is that the instructions have been adapted to allow for Humbrol paints. So we can see that we're starting with building up the road wheels, and we're calling out Humbrol 33, which is matte black, so we know that there's some modification to the instructions. And it's telling us here that a solid line is cement and a dotted line is do not cement. I can't see any dotted lines in there, so that is probably in addition to your key. Must be something to do with what had already been produced in the instructions. I'm not sure. Step 2, and we're taking those drive wheels and we're building up the lower hull assembly, which appears to be one single piece minus the back plate. We've got some detail going on the back plate with towing rings and some handles. Then we've got the large idler wheel being put together there, and then the drive sprockets going on. And again, some towing hooks at the front. It's telling us the interior colour is 34, so that's matte white. That's the only colour I can see. And I think in brackets must mean on the alternate side. So here we've got J18, these are the return rollers, and it would be J18 on the other side. Then as we go to step 3, we're building up, I'm not quite sure what that is. That looks like that could be some internal detail maybe. Yeah, I think it could be. Anyway, that's being built up, and then we've got 3 pieces coming together to make something. I'm not sure what that is until we come to put it together. We've got a little fire extinguisher going on there. 19, is that red? Red, black and silver. Then we've got some boxes or something like that being made up. I'm not quite sure what that is either. I think this is all interior detail. When we go over to step 6, it starts becoming a bit more obvious. So this is the transmission and the shafts from the engine, and right, okay, so it makes a bit of sense when you see them in their context. We've got the seats building up, we've got the steering handles there for the tracks, so there is interior detail, not just a little bit in the turret, so that's quite nice. We've got what look like ammunition boxes going in there, 3 of them, and it's asking us to drill some holes in A2 before mounting it into place. Not quite sure what that is. Is that drill holes or is that remove? They look like ejector pins that you've got to remove. Certainly using the symbol for drilling holes. Step 9, and we've moved to the upper hull. We're putting the side skirts on and some individual panels, which is nice. It means we'll have better detail. And then in step 10, we've got lamps and the machine gun going into place. Step 11, we've got hatches going in. Looks like we've got options there for open and closed. Again, very nice, especially as we've got some interior detail in there. Then we've got options around some large box, and I guess that depends on which paint scheme you're doing. And then we've got more details going on, little hatches, looks like some form of engine vent or something like that. Some tools and another hatch. As we go to step 13, looks like we're putting the back plate onto the upper hull there. Then we've got filters going in, showing you the position by showing you a picture of the model, which is good. Then step 15, we're building an alternative arrangement, so fuel cans, if you want them. You've got an option of boxes, basically different configuration of what it's carrying is what they're sort of telling us. And it's not specifically saying paint scheme A, paint scheme B, so it might just be these are options and you can build it up as you wish. You can see that box going on there, which is there. And then in step 17, we're we're and it's telling you to melt the pin heads. Haven't done that for a little while. Or we have the individual track links, which seem to be made up of 3 parts. The 2 little triangular pieces joining the 2 rubber block pieces together. So that could be interesting. Step 18, and we're putting together the main gun. And yep, seems to have a secondary gun being mounted next to it. Then we're building up the interior basket of the turret there. Step 21, we bring that together and mount it in the tank. Step 22, the turret is built up around it. Fair few pieces going into that. Then we've got the turret mounted machine gun and ammunition box going in, and then finally we've got some, I'm guessing they're smoke dischargers, the turret lid, and that little front face that goes over the 2 guns. And that completes the build of the tank. 24 steps. Seem to be quite a few parts. I think the interior looks a little bit light in detail, but we'll have to look at the plastic parts. Let's have a look at the paint schemes next. Right, scheme A seems to have a lot of colours. We've got 4 there, then we've got another 6 there. So there's a lot of colours. It's not often you see Airfix colours being mixed, but we are. We're mixing 4 parts 132 with 3 parts 20 and 1 part 15. So there's quite a mix of colours there to get that where they would like it to be. I also noticed that they've got linen being shouted out. Now, interestingly, linen's not available in the Humbrol dropper bottles at the time I'm recording this. You can still get it in the bigger bottles that they're phasing out, but it does concern me that there is a lot of Humbrol colours have appeared to have dropped off recently. So 1 or 2 kits may no longer have paints to support them, so that's worth keeping your eye on. But all in all, that is quite a nice little paint scheme. We've got this pastel green against the desert yellow with some of these dark red patches. Very nice. We've also got our decal shout outs, and yeah, I think that looks quite an interesting little tank. Being in the desert, you can put some dust on it, you can fade the paint, there's all sorts of stuff you can do with that. Looks very, very interesting. If we go to scheme B, well, that's a all over olive drab scheme, so not quite as unusual as the other scheme, and you can see the decals going on. That's definitely a less interesting scheme than that, isn't it? So we have a little decal sheet. It's got some instructions in Korean and English on the back. So I would guess that these are not cartograph decals. They certainly don't look like cartograph decals. They're a little bit lumpier than Airfix decals usually are, and there is a bit of film around them. They're quite shiny actually, quite glossy, so probably will need a good matte clear coat afterwards. Yeah, not to the usual Airfix standard, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a problem in any way. Right, our plastic parts, and the first bag out has our upper and lower hull sections in it, and they've put them together in the bag, and as you can see, they fit together really nicely. And as I look at it, there's some lovely bolt detail. There's detail underneath, so you can have it overhanging a rock face and you can see underneath, and that would be all good and doable. Yeah, nicely moulded. as Academy stuff always is. I don't see any sink. Yeah, that's quite a nice, nicely moulded piece, that. There's a nice bit of texturing on the front, which is different to the other side, so I imagine that's right and supposed to represent a casting. Whether those are supposed to be on or they need cleaning off, I'm not sure, so a little bit of research needed there. If we look at the top of the hull, again, lots of bolt detail. We've got positioning points for various things. So depending on your options, I don't know whether you'd have to be removing some of these possibly. We do have some ejector pin marks that will be visible, but they're all ones that need filling, so a bit of work there to clean that up, but otherwise it's really quite nice. Where we've got this plastic line here, there is a little bit of sink, which can be seen there, so you're either going to be spending some time carefully filling and sanding that, or maybe putting some rope on it, or doing some damage to it or something, but otherwise that is very, very nice. Nothing wrong with that at all. This bag out had 3 sprues, 2 of which are to do with the track, so we'll come back to those. So this is sprue C, and you can see there that we've got the internal plate there, which has got some diamond tread texturing on there, which is quite nice, and some internal parts. We've got the seats there. They're a bit basic. There's no creases or wrinkles or anything in there. There's a little bit on the back of the seat, but not on the cushion. Everything's nice and crisp. We've got our dashboard there. I don't think we've got decal dials for it though, which is a shame. I might be wrong, but I don't think we did. All our decals are external, whereas a lot of this on here is internal parts. It is quite dumbed down, so the ratchets are just lumps of plastic. You don't see any teeth or anything. So yeah, it's a little dumbed down, but you're only really going to see a glimpse of it. So once painted up, it's going to look fine. We do have some internal cabling. It looks quite heavy and chunky, but actually under paint probably won't look too bad. There's that little fire extinguisher as well that we saw. So as the connecting pieces of our tracks, these are actually very crisply moulded. I can't see any flash at all in any of the holes, so you should be able to paint this all up on the sprue and then very carefully nip it off, put your tracks together, and then either weather out or touch up the bits where your sprue gates were. But they look very nice indeed. Yeah, they should look really nice. They're quite nicely detailed as well. So we have 2 of those. Okay, our next sprue out is D, and that's got all sorts of parts on it, some of which weren't in the instructions, like these bags here. So we seem to have some tools, shovels, stuff that wasn't actually on the instructions, I'm fairly sure. A little wooden box. You could probably take the mountings off those and use them in a diorama or something, so do keep them. There's a number of handles here, You might want to make your own wire ones, but those are quite nice and crisply moulded. We seem to have the eyes for steel cable ropes, and then we've got parts that are used, the towing rings and machine guns that are used, the ammunition boxes. Yeah, they're all nicely moulded, nicely detailed, as good as anybody's. And some hatches there. You see the hatches there. Nothing wrong with those. Just flip that over there for you. Okay, sprue B, we've got a collection of parts here, mainly for the outside of the tank. So we've got the side skirts there on the sides. We've got some of those plates that were separate for the hull. We've got the engine deck there, the front little window covers that hinge down. We've got the filters are moulded as solid, and as a result have a bit of sink, but it's in the bottom, so that won't be seen, so that's fine. Got the smaller machine guns, some interior parts, a tripod that is stowed away. Then we've got some lifting rings, more handles, more towing hooks, ammunition boxes that we saw being used inside. Looks like a radio set. The lamps, there's no clear parts here. And then some of the boxes that were being placed. They're a little bit basic in terms of their detail, but they're very passable. The bit of paint and weathering, you'll focus on that rather than the detail. Yeah. All very nice. In this bag we've also got our rubber band tracks, and actually they're good and chunky, and they look quite passable under paint, to be honest. You've got some nubs inside you've got to clean up, half a dozen or so. I have just tested them and they do go together really quite well, but you do lose the track link in that process. They do link on a rubber block, but somehow don't quite look right on the joint, but otherwise I think those look really okay. A little bit of cleanup needed, but otherwise, if that's going to be the way you want to go, it shouldn't be a problem. The rubber block part of the individual track links are equally as nicely done as the first bits that we saw. There is a little bit of flash on one, and that appears to be the case on just that one sprue of the two that we've got. So not quite sure why that is. They do look slightly different. Although they both say G, the sprues do look. Well, they're both G sprues and they appear to be identical. So why we've got flash on just one, I'm not sure. But yeah, they're nice, thick tracks. Rubber blocks are good. I've only got my reading glasses on, but they look crisp enough that they'll just go together. Doesn't look like we've got a load of seam scraping to do, so they look alright to me. Sprue J, and we have some steel cable once it's been painted up, and all of our road and return rollers and what have you, all of our wheels basically, and the bits for the suspension. So pretty much this is the first sprue you're going to be working through, building up the suspension. The wheels look nicely done, and the sprockets have fastener detail on them and inside detail on them, casting detail, and it's the same with the big idler wheel at the back. So yeah, that's all crisp. It's not a bad sprue at all, that. It feels somehow slightly simplified to other manufacturers, but I'll keep saying it, under paint this should look great. Next we have our one-piece turret, and we've got some nice, the whole thing is nice and crisp. We've got some nice rivet detail on there. Obviously we've got other parts that attach onto there to add the detail. On the back though, we've got what I think should be viewports, and they're just rings. Should be able to drill those out, I would imagine, but a little bit of referring to references is needed. But if I'm right and they are viewpoints, it shouldn't be difficult to open them up. We have some welding detail along the top that's not overdone, so that's quite nice as well. Yeah, and you can just see the witness of some areas where you're placing parts. So all in all, that's not a bad part at all. Main thing is there's no sink, so you can work with that quite easily. It's just clean up that bit there and away you go. Then finally, sprue A, which has mainly parts for our turret. So we've got the front glacis plate, which has a nice textured cast feel to it. That's actually really quite nice. We've got a steel forward facing plate there, so I'm guessing that's an alternative for different models. We've got our turret lid, has some raised ejector pin marks. If you've got it open, you're going to have to sand those down, but that's not difficult to get to any of those. Our turret basket's got some texturing on the floor, and we've got the basic structure there. It's not overly detailed, but it's good enough. And then we've got some external parts, some covers, the back ends of some of the machine guns, and that's our base of our turret. Yeah, doesn't look bad. As with the rest of it, lots and lots of nice crisp moulding. So there we have it, Airfix's 1:35 scale British M3 Stuart Honey, former Academy kit that's 20 years old now, with some decals that have been done by Academy for Airfix. So in all intents and purposes, this is an Academy kit. What are my first impressions? Well, I always think that Academy kits are in some way a little bit clinical. They sort of, the plastic lacks emotion, and it's very difficult to describe, but everything is there, and there's a lot of nice, clean, crisp moulding, but somehow it just feels a little bit lifeless. And it's difficult to exactly put my finger on it, but it just feels like it's the parts and nothing else to it. Whereas when you build other tanks from other manufacturers, you sort of feel that as you put it together, there's a soul in it somehow. I don't know whether it's lack of texture. I mean, certainly there's some nice texture on the gun mantle and on the front there, where there should be some castings, but everything else is very, very smooth, almost shiny. You have got fastener detail and stuff like that, so I'm sure when you put some paint on it, it will come to life. But in its component parts, it just feels a little bit like it needs something else. And I'm not quite sure what that is. What you've got is very nice. What you've not got is a little bit of moulding finesse, but you've got a 20-year-old kit. So, you know, you've got plastic grills where you'd perhaps like some photo etch in this day and age. The same with the light guards. You'd really like them to be photo etched so that they were sort of in scale. But it's all there. You can build it straight out of the box. If you want to keep it simple, the rubber band tracks look great. If you want to spend time doing your link and length, then you know that's not a problem either. You're not really going to see much of the track if you put the side skirt on. Obviously, in option B, you don't have the side skirt on, and you can put a little bit of sag in the track if you wish. But with some careful painting and some nice weathering, you can really make this look something quite nice and presentable as a display piece on a diorama, whichever way you're going to go. So I don't dislike it. It's not blown my socks off. It doesn't have wow factor, but it does depict an M3 Stuart Honey, which after all is what we buy the kit for. So yeah, I think if you're in the market for one at a reasonable price, that might well be the kit to plumb for. Have a look around, see what else is on offer. You may well find there's aftermarket for this. I'm not going to go to town on it. This will just be a little bit of fun, probably an in-between build. And I've never built an M3 Stuart Honey, so time I did one, I guess. So if you're in the market or you were wondering what this kit was like, you now know. You know what you get in the box. Thank you for looking in. Hope that was useful in some way. You enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon.